So hi everybody, welcome to our Jane's Walk, discovering ideas for the once and future library in St. John's. This is going to be a little bit of an imaginary walk through the city of St. John's, based on the submissions made to a contest that was held this year by the St. John's Public Libraries Board. So quick bit of background is that the Public Libraries Board is the volunteer board that supports and provides guidance to the public library system here in St. John's. As you may or may not know, our libraries in Newfoundland and Labrador are a little bit unusual in the sense that they are provincially run. And so they are governed by a provincial board and a provincial organization, but we do have local boards such as the SJPLB that provide local support, fundraise for things that aren't within the library's budget, and otherwise support the work of the library. And so that's who organized this campaign with these beautiful graphics done by Judd Haynes. And the reason this campaign happened is because this March was the 200th anniversary of the library system in St. John's. So March 1820, the St. John's Library System Library Society was formed at the Freemasons Tavern downtown. They started a reading room there that grew into a series of libraries in many locations over the city over the years. And so this year we're celebrating that 200th anniversary, and we're also actually planning a renovation of the main level, central level of the A.C. Hunter Library, the Arts and Culture Center, which the SJPLB, the board, is contributing a significant amount to, and thinking about what are the future of libraries. And so going into that conversation, we knew that we wanted to gather some public input on what that renovation could look like. But we also knew that as soon as you start a conversation about what libraries should look like in St. John's, people want to take it far beyond the renovation and think about the big picture future. And we really wanted to capture some of that energy that we've all been hearing in conversations, at dinner tables and all around the city that hasn't been really organized yet. And so we started the Once and Future Library campaign. And that included a big online survey, getting input on both the renovation and on the future of libraries more broadly, a public forum, and this design contest where people were asked to submit a napkin sketch, a very basic design, nothing detailed or fancy, of their vision for the future of libraries in St. John's. And we got upwards of 70 submissions, including many from children. This walk will take us through the ones that are really attached to a particular location in town, so that we can envision the transformation of that location into a library. I'll just close the intro by saying this is really, as many people have called it, the golden age of libraries. We're seeing libraries used more than they ever have been before, and in new ways. They become community centers for knowledge in so many ways. They are centers for the sharing economy, for the loan not just of books, but of many other types of resources. They're important pillars in social equity by providing access to many things that folks who might be struggling, for example, with low income would not have access to. They're community space. They provide workspace for folks in the new gig economy. They become far more than just a place to lend books from. And the transformation of libraries across the country has reflected that. So almost every city in Canada, our size or smaller or larger, has renewed or refreshed its libraries physically and program-wise over the last 10 years or so. And St. John's, we're not quite there yet, although the programming itself is very much very active. The physical space hasn't had that kind of major transformation. And so we do want to think a little bit about what could the next version of the library in St. John's look like. And that's kind of what this walk will focus on as we visit some locations where submitters to our design contest submitted ideas. So what I'm going to do is we're going to visit those locations, and I'm going to read out the description that was provided by the submitter, maybe provide a bit of commentary if we need it. And where the submitter is on the call, we will ask them to make some remarks. So let's get started. We're going to start in the east end of St. John's. Folks might recognize this building, the old Hoyles Eskasoni complex, former long-term care home, long vacant now, for sale for quite some time. And Samantha Tobin envisioned this as a new library. She says, her dream library acts as a central hub for inclusive learning with an overall theme of environmental consciousness. She chose the location to be in the old Eskasoni building located at 230 Portugal Cove Road. This building is currently vacant in close proximity to schools, the university, colleges, a seniors complex, bike and walking trails, and is a short bus ride from the downtown center. It has plenty of space to hold information sessions, craft sessions, early literacy sessions, a children's play area, and a cafe aligning with an inclusive community center feel. Her dream is a library that is fully accessible, whose focus is not only on book lending, but in becoming a welcoming hub for the community that supports all learning. In terms of design elements, she chose to leave the overall structure of the building to minimize cost and new materials. She added modern yet functional elements such as large window features and a fun, architecturally appealing, sheltered entrance with wooden design elements. Keeping to the environmental theme, she thinks it would be great if the library had a green roof, bike racks, as well as charging stations in the parking lot for electric vehicles. She envisions a park-like setting with an inclusive playground like Easter Seals offers, and it would be great to have a community fruit and vegetable garden on the property that supports a food sharing program. Lastly, she feels that all shrubs and flowers planted on the property should be designed to attract birds, bees, and other insects, thus reducing our environmental impact. The next spot we're going to visit is just down McDonald Drive from that one. Folks would recognize it as the old bingo hall next to Kenny Spawn there. And Vlastimir Masek proposed this as a location for his dream library. And he says that a two-wing structure is proposed to provide a unique combination of a library community center and a double ice pad surface. The location considers the area of MQP Bingo Hall across the street from McDonald Drive Elementary, which has large parking area besides being centrally located between 3 schools and a dozen other institutions in close proximity, including Vanier, College of North Atlantic, and numerous retirement residences. The design symbolizes 2 periods in our modern history, British and Canadian, with a seagull as a centerpiece representing the nature and ancestral homeland of the Mi'kmaq and Beothuk. From an aerial view, the building also resembles an open book. Our unique climate presents many challenges in operating and maintaining such infrastructure year-round. The cost of heating is the most significant one. Incorporating a skating rink at the ground level will enable using the reclaimed heat from the refrigeration to heat the library and all other spaces. This excess heat will also be used for heating outdoor walkways and disability parking. Besides the library, there's also an urgent need for a modern skating facility similar to those available in CBS, Paradise, and Mount Pearl and Torbay. The combination of educational, cultural, and sport facilities under one roof will provide ample activities for all ages. As a post-secondary educator, he witnesses our graduates leaving the province in staggering numbers. This modern, multi-purpose facility will provide motivation to stay and get engaged with the community. Housing the library with a sport, cultural community, and a food court in one building not only offers a smorgasbord of activities, but with the challenging climate in mind, it also allows for cost sharing. This applies to both the initial construction as well as operations and maintenance, and he anticipates the land will be conditionally donated. One can hope. So from the east end, we're going to start moving towards downtown, and we're going to move towards the place that came up the most often in both our design contest and in our survey as a potential library, and that's the Colonial Building. So there were a couple of submissions related to the reuse of the Colonial Building. I'll read first Adrian Houses. And Adrian says, his design is to use the currently unused Colonial Building as the seat of a new central library. Aesthetically, the building is outstanding with its neoclassical features and is already an integral part of the neighborhood, but it has been ignored and is not currently in use. Turning it into our library would change this and center it in downtown as the public space of meeting, learning, and social interaction, which is currently lacking. It is a historically important building as the seat of Newfoundland's government up until Confederation, and a public library would be an ideal evolution of this purpose. In contrast with the cost of building a brand new structure from scratch, repurposing this existing building, which has already undergone extensive restoration, would be relatively cheap, seamless, and easy to achieve. Also, a new building might not fit aesthetically into the downtown, whereas the Colonial Building is already integral to the look of the area. In conclusion, the Colonial Building would be a centrally located, beautiful, historically important location for a new library achievable at a low cost, and already an important landmark in the downtown. He thinks the public would embrace it with open arms. This is not the only submission, actually, we got for this building. Another one came into the design contest, which highlighted something that came up quite a bit in the survey of the idea of using this building but adding an addition to it. So this one's from Gina Nordhoff. And Gina says, she feels like the library should be connected to the Colonial Building in a square building structure made mostly of glass. There should be a wrought iron silhouette image of past politicians in the windows so it aligns with the top structure of the Colonial Building and what the Colonial Building stands for. There could be a tunneled hallway into the bottom floor of the Colonial Building. The more popular books could be on shelves in this hallway and on the bottom floor of the Colonial Building, unless it could hold historic ones too. Not certain of the amount of space you'd need to hold books, but the top 2 floors could still potentially be a museum. The glass structure would be for tables and chairs, a good coffee shop, and space for lectures and events. The open concept would be a great inspiration piece, and for social interaction, it could be a tourism attraction also, giving people more reason to come visit the Colonial Building and now knowing what the building's purpose was in just one glance. The library itself could be a tourism attraction. She's traveled extensively, and libraries often interested her as a place to visit in cities where they've done a great job of making inspiring library spaces. This would help the downtown core be more utilized and encourage people and families to park and walk around, maybe even justifying an all-year outdoor market one day. Probably would have to make a parkade somewhere near, maybe across the space from Hungry Heart, or underneath the glass building there. But the proximity to Bannerman Park would be great because the library staff and workers and users could use this space for events and activities. She loves the fairy ring of trees in the northwest corner of Bannerman Park. Can you imagine the fun it would be to have an annual fairy festival for children, integrating this space into the event? The proximity of this Bannerman Park library to the harbor is also great because you would get cruise ship passengers using it in the spring, summer, and fall. So from the Colonial Building, we're going to keep walking east a little bit downtown. We're going to make a quick stop here by the Lake Avenue Dominion, which was proposed by Jennifer Anderson as a potential library. So Jennifer says the Dominion has never fit in the park area, and now with the opening of Coleman's, it's more empty. Perhaps Loblaws would like a way out. Perhaps they could sell it back to the people of St. John's for $1. This would solve one of the city's most important issues, lack of a proper library. And the building is the perfect location beside the trail system in a beautiful community gathering area downtown. We built it as a memorial. What better tribute than a library? We're going to swing around now and head downtown, head towards the harbor from here. We're going to stop here at the bottom of Temperance Street. Folks who were on the Vacant Spaces Walk last week might recognize it. We had a lot of chat about the many proposals that have been made over the years, including bankruptcy-inducing condo proposals for the area across the way with the cars parked in it. And that area is the site that several people have proposed for a new library. I'm going to start first with Sarah Garland. So Sarah says she imagines that a new library for St. John's would be more than a place to take out books and leave again, but could encourage collaboration and curiosity and house events with community partners. She imagines that the library could have co-working spaces, event and lecture spaces, reading rooms, and nooks, which encourages visitors to stay a while. She chose Temperance Street as the location for the library because it is a beautiful site, close to the Narrows, the Battery, and the downtown core, with an interesting history and proximity to other cultural and historic sites like the Terry Fox Memorial, Signal Hill, the Geo Center, and downtown art galleries. With the addition of a library, the area of downtown could begin to be imagined as a destination for community and cultural activities, bringing a new life to Temperance Street. The design is simple in its form to emphasize its materiality, but variety in the building's volumes would allow for differences in the interior spaces. She chose weathered steel cladding and concrete to reference the industrial neighbors at the harbor's edge. The burgundy brown of the steel also aligns with the colors of the site's interesting heritage-designated neighbors, the Temperance Street sister homes, which have red trim and brownstone facades. We had a second proposal for the same site, this one from Bonnie Power. And Bonnie says she placed her napkin sketch for a main branch library for St. John's on Temperance Street. She chose that site as a salute to the old children's Gosling Memorial Library that she loved as a child, going to school at Bond Street Elementary and running down the hill at lunch to check out as many books as the limit would allow. The reason she chose this site, besides being downtown, is the view of the harbor and Pier 17 it would provide. Like the old children's Gosling, she would want a children's library to inspire adventure and curiosity. She thinks these views could encourage that. Simply, the design is another glass building that allows as much natural light inside and allows great views from each floor of the three-story building. The outside of the building is covered with large random colored glass panels that would provide color to the building and may represent colored glass found in many home doors, both downtown and in rural Newfoundland. One color is copper colored so that it shines in the sunlight. There's landscape performance space outside of a small to medium size with fixed seating. This space could be used as an outdoor venue for downtown events. When the sun is shining, this site gets a lot of sunlight, which would be warming in the inside and outside. The building would really shine in that sunlight. The closest school is Bishop Field Elementary. Sadly, she doesn't think the kids would be allowed to freely run down over the hill at lunchtime to visit this library. For our next stop on this walk, we're going to continue west now along the harbor front. And we're actually along Duckworth Street first and then down to the harbor. So heading down Duckworth Street, we reach this spot at the bottom of Holloway Street and Nunnery Hill. And Luke Quinton's submission for this spot is shown here. This is what Luke says. He says, one of the most incredible views of the city could be transformed into a public amenity if the library is built on this steep site. It features a tree-filled green space on the eastern edge of the property, which would encourage people to pursue a walk to the top of Nunnery Hill to take in the views, or maybe just to linger leisurely for a picnic with a library book in hand. The main building would be made of cross-laminated timber beams, adding warmth to the downtown textures. It would have a bustling downstairs coffee shop and reading room and reward visitors with incredible views protected from weather. On the top floor is an iconic event space, which can be accessed by anyone who walks from Nunnery Hill out onto a green roof and or closed for private events like small ceremonies and weddings. Now, we're going to head down to the harbor, where Luke has another submission. What if Harbor Drive could be friendly enough for pedestrians that we could rename it Harbor Walk? This project would be front and center on the city's front door, the harbor. It reconnects the city with its all but ignored crown jewel, the waterfront. And if it has the right views and venues, small concert hall, coffee shop, it could become an amazing public amenity. Some of the features include a green roof that's open to the public and can be walked on directly from Harbor Drive, perfect for looking at both sides of the city and the water itself. Now we're going to head about 50 meters down the road to another submission for almost the same site from Michael Philpott. This was one of the winners of our design competition. Michael says, between a security fence and a generation of planning missteps, our city's connection to its harbor is broken. To repair it requires deliberate place building. He proposes a harborside library as a first step towards the long process of reclamation. The gable roof form of the library references the premises and long-lost finger piers, which once lined the shore. The library should not be a recreation, however, but a thoroughly modern intervention. He proposes connecting the library to Water Street by incorporating one of the several long vacant commercial storefronts. This will preserve a downtown heritage asset, give the library a vital street presence, take advantage of existing tunnels throughout the block, and provide sheltered vertical connectivity for those who need it. On Harbor Drive, he proposes incorporating transit infrastructure and outdoor public space to begin activating the thoroughfare. Michael actually had a second submission in this contest, so we're going to keep walking down downtown, heading west again, to the courthouse. Talk of a new court complex for the capital city has circulated for years, Michael says, but the thought of vacating the historic courthouse raises a big question: what to do with it? In the heart of downtown St. John's, steps from the site of our earliest public library and cultural center, the courthouse would make an ideal central library. The size of the building is substantial and could house most functions of a modern library within its walls. In order to meet modern expectations, however, he proposes adding light-filled rooms on either side of the structure to serve as reading, study, meeting rooms, cafe space, and more. In order to make the building universally accessible, the main entrance will be at ground level through a northeast addition. The existing main stair can be used with supplementary seating to form an outdoor theater. This proposal accomplishes several goals: securing a venue for a truly unique library, repurposing an architectural landmark for the downtown, and beginning to establish Cliffs Cove, Bears Cove as a public square. Okay, we're going to head up the hill right behind this library to our next stop on a patch of land that has been the topic of a great deal of discussion in the last year. So let's follow along. So as folks might know, there's been a proposal on the table for development of this space. There's a new version since this one, but there's a proposal to turn this space into condos at the moment. But one of our other proposals and another winner of the design contest was this one, which from Richard D'Agostino, suggesting instead creating a library in that space. And Richard says his idea features an all-glass exterior shaped like an iceberg, nestled into the back corner of the abandoned property between the rooms and Queens Road. The library building is accompanied by a parking garage designed with a mesh exterior commercially printed or painted to mimic rocky cliffs. The top of this garage would be level with Harvey Road and provide a green space with a viewing area of the library building and downtown. The entire structure would give the impression of an iceberg nestled in a cove as light plays off the glass during the day, and would be reminiscent of a lighthouse at night as light shines out from the interior like a beacon in the heart of downtown. The all-glass exterior allows for workspaces and comfort zones to be near windows with plenty of natural light, while allowing protection near the back and on lower floors for more fragile collections. This location on a controversial piece of land downtown could allow for the people of the city to feel a compromise was met in keeping beauty, greenery, and culture in mind when developing this space. The location would also allow for a possibility of a partnership with the rooms and perhaps the construction of a connecting tunnel to the provincial archives within the rooms. He imagines the structure being broken into 3 above ground levels and 1 or 2 basements for protection of sensitive collections, with the top levels devoted to public spaces and collections areas. So that's an interesting alternative to the current proposal on the table for that space for sure. And that's our last design submission for the downtown. We're gonna start walking out of downtown now. On our way north and west, we're gonna stop in Churchill Park, just across the street from Churchill Square, where we had a submission from Cami Melanson, proposing her library in this space, or potentially also somewhere in Pippi Park. And she's dreaming of a landscape courtyard surrounded on two sides by a library that would create a natural gathering place for students and families in the community, with a variety of outdoor seating that would allow people to, enjoy the outdoor space and company and read and study and have meals from the cafe accessible from the courtyard. And she suggests this courtyard would also be an ideal space to host events such as workshops or artist competitions. The main doors would be located within the courtyard, drawing people in the library. The paneling would be wood or wood colored, and the large windows with internal shutters would provide ample natural light, especially in the shorter days of winter. An upper floor balcony on the right-hand side would also provide another outdoor space accessible by the middle or upper level of the library. This could be used by the public for reading or relaxing or hosting workshops, as well as potentially a community garden project. So that's an interesting way of thinking about particularly that patch of land in Churchill Park. So on this walk, we are actually going to return to the Arts and Culture Center, to the site of the current main branch, the A.C. Hunter Library, because a number of the suggestions we got through this process, both through the design contest and through the survey, was that the library shouldn't necessarily leave this building, but perhaps the building itself could be adapted to serve as a more functional library than it currently is. So Wendy Fairhurst made her submission as a re-envisioning of this library. And so I'll read what she said. She says, a new central modern library would allow for public gathering without the onus to pay for time spent, and ensuring the equitable sharing of knowledge. Modern libraries are also economic tools that facilitate a sharing economy. So libraries can, as we were talking about earlier, give a roof to all the different types of libraries. The tool library, instrument and game library, clothing library, makerspace, maybe a food library with shared rooftop gardens and community freezers. But she says a central library on its own just perpetuates car culture, and vast parking lots fairly vacant save for the few large events. Libraries as community builders need to still exist as localized hubs. Imagine an extremely efficient mobile library system that transports book orders from a central to a local hub, or allows real-time tracking of your order. And she suggests this could be a shuttle service between the local and central library. If the region were to think really holistically, these local hubs could double as warm-up stations for public transit or carpooling, allowing people to be connected and productive while waiting for their regional transit connection. They would allow small community gatherings, internet access, and walkability cycling, while also supporting the central library. And she says the existing A.C. Hunter is a great central location, but the existing facilities are constricting. What if, without losing much parking space, the new library floated out over the existing parking lot, highly visible and adding life to the Parkway intersection? A few ground floor amenities, including a quality coffee shop with the ability to savor your beverage upstairs while reading or watching children play. Natural light, sustainable technologies. It doesn't have to be too big or too expensive to be highly impactful, is Wendy's idea for this space. And we have one more stop on our walk around town to visit design submissions. We're going to keep going west now. We're going to stop at the Village Mall. And so this submission by Jane Kim suggests repurposing the part of the Village Mall, which right now holds the empty former Klondike Jake's restaurant, and repurposing it into a library. So his design has the front of the building being insulated translucent glass with an ocean design to allow natural light to get into the building and obscure the view of the parking lot from inside the library. In front of the doors, there'd be a pickup and drop-off zone for GO Bus and school buses. Above the glass front, there's a warm toned wood design element to separate the cool tones of the glass below in the middle and glass greenhouse on top. And then the rooftop greenhouse of geodesic design, which he says is the best design for wind and extreme weather, will be accessible by stairs and an elevator from the main space below. Libraries are becoming innovative learning centers. This proposed location would have a kitchen that would be able to teach patrons of all ages about nutrition and healthy eating. The main floor would include a large multi-purpose room for lectures and films and workshops and concerts, smaller meeting rooms, computer area, study rooms, story time, playroom, seating areas, and stacks for library materials. And then the large rooftop greenhouse would grow herbs and vegetables that go into healthy meals. Potential greenhouse workshops are planting and composting, and the green space can be enjoyed by patrons for reading and relaxing in a bright space amongst plants and flowers. And last bit on there is that the location is currently an unoccupied restaurant within the Village Mall with external access. Malls today, like libraries, are undergoing change. Stores are closing in many malls. The library would be an anchor tenant and increase foot traffic, which would benefit the other stores, and potentially bring in other new tenants. It would also be close to a high school, elementary schools, daycares, could all make easy trips to get there. And would be inclusive and reachable for folks who don't have access to a car, since this mall is already a public transit hub and is easily accessible by vehicle. So that's going to end our walk across town, but I would be remiss if we didn't visit a couple of the many kids submissions we got. These don't quite have locations on them, but we can stop and, oh yeah, that's the location for this one right now. But we should, of course, mention our children's design contest winners, which include the Library of Gnomes, which is exactly what it sounds like, and the Rainbow Library at the foot of, this one does have a location right at the foot of Signal Hill. I'd really encourage people to go on the design contest website and go through the kids submissions, because there's a ton of them and they're amazing. So it was really nice to see how passionate kids were about this idea and about libraries, and that was really one of the most fun parts about organizing this process. But that will conclude our walk. Now we do have a little bit of time to chat. If anyone wants to talk about what their dream library would look like, or if any of these ideas really kind of struck a chord for you, feel free, like, just unmute yourself and say hi to the group, or type something in the chat box.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, Josh. How's it going?
Oh, hey, it's Luke. So Luke had a couple of designs in this contest. Do you want to add anything, or share some thoughts?
Yeah, I just thought it was such a great exercise, like a time to think positively about, especially underserved views and like tucked away places. And, for me, like, I just see the harbor, definitely Harbor Drive, and the Nunnery Hill as such like underserved, appreciated views and locations in town. So anything like that, any public amenity that could go there, it just seemed to me to be such like an amazing feature. It would just add so much to downtown, another reason to come down without spending money.
Totally. I think that's a really good point about it. There's particularly about Nunnery Hill. It's not really hidden. You can see it from wherever you are in the area, but it's not sort of emphasized, and most people don't necessarily walk up there for a look, right? And so that's a really interesting way of thinking about this. Totally. I think the other thing I thought about with that submission, with a couple of the other ones, is that, and one thing that I really liked about this contest is most of these were not at Halifax scale. We don't necessarily need to build this such a large or landmark facility as Halifax has for a library to really make a difference, either to a neighborhood or to its users, right? And so it was really nice to see people kind of think their way through that as they did these submissions.
Yeah, totally. And we, as people probably know, we moved from Austin, Texas a couple years ago, and they had just finished doing this stunning library. But shortly after it was completed, like the only critique of it really was that it was too small. Um, but it was sort of, it was 5 stories or something. It was pretty small footprint. But I think they just had no idea how popular it was going to be. There was a restaurant in the ground floor and like a cafe and like exhibit space for museums. There was like a garden and solar panels on the top deck, and it was just outrageous. Like, it had so many amenities and just got people super excited. So like, it doesn't have to be big, it just has to sort of give people some energy.
Totally. And one thing we did, the other one little element of this campaign actually was going out and looking up examples of smaller cities, sort of cities around St. John's size, that have renewed their libraries in recent years. And we found almost all of them have. and most of them are not giant, but there's some really interesting examples of both like adaptive restorations of heritage buildings or new builds that that exactly do something that really have taken off in the community. So I'd actually encourage folks, hop on the Once and Future Library Facebook page sometime and just flick back through some of the photos, because we were sharing sort of Library of the Day for a while. And you'll see some really interesting examples of libraries in cities of under 200,000 people that really made a difference to their community, and it's really kind of exciting to see. Anyone else have a comment or a question or a thought?
Hi, Josh. This is Jen. Thanks so much for this super interesting presentation. And I just wanted to kind of note that it's really interesting that a lot of these different designs focused on like the more community or arts and culture elements of what a library is for, like talking about cooking classes or a deliberate connection to the rooms or sight lines even. Like, I think it's really interesting that, of course, a library has never just been about books or reading, but it seems like people are making like a really clear connection between what a library is right now, perhaps in the city, and what they hope it could be, beyond just design. And it's more about what are those elements that can be brought into it, that make it more of a community space. Like even talking about co-working and that kind of thing. Like I think that's really interesting. So I'm really glad to see that that came out in so many of these designs.
Yeah, it's interesting, and even in the surveys we were doing around what the renovation of the existing interior of the existing AC Hunter could do, I think that was part of the feedback we got, is just that like the function that libraries play over the years have changed so greatly, and from just a place that you visit to get something and bring it home to a place that you stay for a significant amount of time and use in a whole bunch of different ways. And so that's, I think, going to really influence both like the physical design and the programming and all of that going forward, right? And I think this was very much just trying to kind of start a conversation from a community, for the community, right? We're many years away from getting any kind of new library branch in St. John's. It's not like this is not a live issue yet, but it was really interesting to see how much thought people had put into that, and how they would use this space, and what, to your point, that books were definitely important, and books are still going to be important, but it goes way beyond that now, totally. Anybody else with a question or a comment they'd like to make? All right. Well, I will we'll close down this walk. It's been a lovely hour with all of you. I've been recording, and so we'll Jen, I'll make sure this gets to Happy City to post up, so folks can follow along after. But I would really encourage everybody to visit onceandfuturelibrary.ca. I'm going to put that on the screen actually. One second here, because I should have before. And then you can check out all the different submissions and some of the background to this project, and learn a little bit more about the Public Libraries Board, and really encourage you to stay engaged with this conversation. Hopefully it's not going to end here. There's a lot of really interesting conversation left to have. So, but thanks for joining me on a Sunday morning, everybody.
Hey Josh, it's Julia here. I just wanted to also say thanks so much on behalf of Happy City and on the Jane's Walks planners. This was really interesting. And for those who don't know, Josh also did a wonderful Jane's Walk last week on vacant places around St. John's, and you can find that recording also on the Happy City website. So thanks again, Josh. This was great.
Great. Have a great day, everybody. Enjoy your Sundays, and go to the Happy City website, because there's a ton of interesting online Jane's Walk resources up there that you can do on your own time, and some happening live, and it's been really fun to see how the adversity of this year transformed Jane's Walks into something really cool. So with that, I will see you all later. Thanks again for joining me.
Thanks, Josh. See ya.
Thanks, Josh.
Bye-bye.